Oh. Um, so I'm thrilled to be chatting today to Alexander Armstrong. Many of you will know as a great British actor, comedian and presenter of Pointless. Thank you, Alexander, very much for chatting to me today.
What a pleasure.
Um,
Nice to be here.
well, it's very nice to have you. So, Xander, how did you and Ben Miller first form your brilliant Armstrong and Miller duo? How did that come about?
Um, yeah, it's a funny one. It was a slightly controversial one, that one, because I'd kind of started a double act with an old friend from university, uh, and we had been, yeah, we'd sort of done about a year of writing and performing together, and it wasn't an entirely, yeah, I don't know, it wasn't an entirely happy match, that one, um, or perhaps or perhaps even worse, I sort of became aware of Ben. We joined this great comedy collective. Having left, I basically left university with absolutely no idea what I wanted to do, apart from wanting to do comedy. Actually, I wanted to
Yeah.
perform, and until anything else happened or any other bright ideas dawned on me, I thought I'd give comedy my best shot for a year, see what happened. And if nothing had come of it, then I was going to go off and probably do a law conversion course and go and do,
Yes.
I don't know, be a barrister or something like that. Anyway,
Much more
and
interesting.
a whole gang of us. Well, well, do you know what? Luckily, it all fell into place rather beautifully. The a whole gang of us who'd been, because I was at Cambridge where they have the Footlights Club, which is a sort of big, long established a sort of society for wannabe comics who can basically, it's a chance for us to get all our worst material out of our systems while we're safely off the radar, still at university. And it's just very good because it gets your comedy juices flowing, and
Yes.
you learn all kinds of absolutely invaluable lessons, like how the hell you've got to edit stuff all the
Mm.
time, and sometimes that means getting rid of all your favorite jokes because they're possibly not that funny to
No.
other people. You just learn all kinds of fantastic. You're basically just chucked in front of an audience twice a term, and you learn absolutely what makes an audience, what really bores an audience. You learn that quite quickly, and it's just great. So you come out of
Great
that
grounding.
thinking, well, I think we've got, I think we might have something here, and you know that at least you've satisfied a paying auditorium
Mm.
of punters, and that you've got enough material and enough chutzpah to give it a decent shove, and so you come out of Cambridge thinking, well, maybe we should give it a whirl. You have this sort of indefatigable sense of your own self reliance. I think
Yeah.
it's the great thing that. In fact, it's not just Cambridge. There are tons of Bristol's got a brilliant comedy society. Warwick University's got a brilliant, and you learn this terrific sense of self sustainability. That's it,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
you run all your own productions, and you run you do all your own ticketing and all your own front of house stuff, and you do all your
Brilliant.
own publicity, put your posters up. And you got leafleting on the streets, and so you kind of have this sense. Well, we could do that. We could make it work.
Yeah.
And there were enough of us. Maybe it was a lean year in the city or something that year. I don't know. I was never going to go into the city, but
No.
there were a ton of us leaving Cambridge at that time who didn't really have any other jobs to do. And we all thought, come on, we could make this work. So
Yeah.
deluded though we were, it turns out we kind of could make it work. And we started a comedy club in Notting Hill
You and Ben.
that ran every. Well, there was a
Oh,
whole gang of us. I guess there were
right.
probably
Okay.
maybe
Sorry.
I don't know, maybe 12 of us running this thing. And Ben was part of that gang. And I and this lovely guy, David Wollstonecroft, who I'd been doing comedy with up to that point, he and I had been doing lots of stuff together. And then, I don't know, I'm afraid this is terribly disloyal of me. I sort of spotted Ben, and I'd seen Ben performing quite a lot. He had been at Cambridge as well, but he was a few years ahead.
Mm.
Um, and we kind of, I was writing with David, this other guy, and then I started writing with Ben. I mean, it's like having a sort of comedy affair
Yes,
in some
yes, I suppose
awful
it is.
way. And before I knew it, I was writing stuff with Ben, and Ben and I had a very similar sense of humor. And
Yes,
so suddenly we could I don't know, you just I found that because we were aligned, we could just do, we could write the stuff that we'd always wanted to write, and we could perform it in the way that we always wanted to perform. And
yeah,
I'm afraid poor old David got the heave ho, and I ended up working with Ben, and
yeah,
things very quickly took off. We got a really good show together for Edinburgh, and the Edinburgh Festival, which is basically where all comics go
yes,
to live or die. And
yeah. Big start there.
yeah, that's how it started. And then we started doing comedy. We did a comedy series with the Paramount Channel, and we then got picked up by Channel 4. It's very exciting. And in '96, we did our first terrestrial series. We did 4 series in the end for Channel 4 between '96 and 2000.
Wow,
Um,
brilliant.
and that was back in the days when we wrote absolutely everything ourselves, and we sort of produced it ourselves. We had this brilliant director, Matt Lipsey, and we would kind of shoot it guerrilla style, where we had no budget at all, but we would make do with whatever we could. And actually, consequently, it was incredibly inventive. We were forever trying. We had this brilliant guy who was our locations manager. We would set things in. We found you could be incredibly clever with your sound effects. I
Yeah,
remember we had one thing that was set on this huge sort of cruise ship that obviously we could never film on a cruise ship, but we discovered that we could film on one of those massive gasometers on the outskirts of Sheffield. And so
right.
we'd go to Sheffield, and we'd climb up, and these quite dizzy heights, but they have railings. And if you put a couple of those life rings, and
Yes,
then when you're editing, you put a few seagulls on and a few, you know,
and you're
bingo.
sorted.
You're on a cruise ship. It's amazing.
How
It
brilliant.
was- And if you shot it from below, you just saw the sky above, and it looked absolutely fantastic. So yeah,
Yeah,
we would we managed to cut our cloth in such a way that we could get everything done, and actually,
yeah.
it made it really. It just had a kind of charm to it then. Um,
How
but
brilliant.
that your TV show is just voracious. It eats absolutely everything you've ever written very, very quickly. You get to the end of one series, and if you're lucky enough to get another series, you really have to be ready with it. They'll
Yes.
say, "Well, can we start filming in 3 months?" You go, "Well,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, maybe."
think, God,
And I
shit.
think we wrote, and we wrote an awful. We just wrote a lot of stuff. I think a lot of stuff that later on, but by the time we were on BBC One, we would have probably done a deft edit of quite a lot of that stuff. But it was great, and we cut our teeth that way, and it was brilliant. So yes, we started then. That was a very long answer. Sorry to your very
No, no,
simple
it's
question.
fascinating.
That was
It's
how we.
fascinating to hear.
That was how we met. In fact, we were introduced properly by Jez Butterworth, the who's also in our sort of gang
Mm.
of ne'er do wells from Cambridge. Who basically decided we'd go live a free life and pursue our literary and comedic dreams. So he was,
Fun, it must
yeah,
be.
he and Ben were sharing a flat then,
Mm.
and I was doing a play with Jez, and he said, "You and Ben, you've got to start writing together." So we did, and we never really looked
Look back.
back.
No. And did you and Ben sort of ever have disagreements and sort of the odd
I
hiccup?
Yeah, I think
I
you
guess
do
you
have.
do
I
in
mean,
any partnership.
it's funny. I mean, those. I mean, you don't to start with. You
Mm.
have. I mean, I don't think disagreements are unhealthy. I think they're a very important part of your creative
Mm.
collaboration. Good collaboration is always going to be. It should be an open forum. Um,
Yeah.
it's Yeah. I mean, the funny thing is, the very best things, I think, some of the freshest and most, I don't know, the most colourful stuff we wrote, I think, was the very first stuff we wrote when we were really geeing each other up and too polite ever to say, "No, I'm not sure about that." So
So
for instance,
going, yes,
I've
yes,
got this idea. exactly. Your response was always, always
Positive.
fertile. You'd always
Yeah.
going to say, yes, let's do that. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great idea. I love it. And actually, I think the truth is you have to keep that. Really, you want to be as fertile as you possibly can. And actually, great ideas come out of sometimes quite unpromising starts because you're each so keen for it to work.
Yes.
Then,
And
as
it
you get to know
evolved,
each other
like,
better, yes, and I
mm,
think as you get to know each other better, I think you start to think, well, yeah, I'm not sure about that. There are you when you're writing under the cosh like we were, that you've got a deadline. You've really got to fill up the wall. You've got all these little. We
yes.
always used to start first thing you do when you've got 6 episodes to fill
Yeah.
is you make columns on a whiteboard, and you've got show one, show two, show three, etc. And you just pin up the things that you think you've already got, or the things that you need,
Yes.
and you start to fill it like that. And you do you are spending an awful lot of time in each other's company, and you do get quite tired, and you do get a bit sort of grumpy about one
Yes.
thing
Of
or
course.
another, or
Yeah.
you know and you're writing something that is it comes comedy comes from a very and one of the lovely things about comedy is it comes from a very personal place. Its germination is right deep within you, and almost at a sort of pre-verbal level. It's a things that make you laugh
Yes.
are quite primal.
Yeah.
And then when you bring it out and other people laugh at it, you get this overwhelming warm sense of connection. That's
Must
one of
be
the lovely
so
things of it.
rewarding.
Yes, I
Must
mean
be such a
huge,
great feeling.
and sort of validating as well. It makes you think, well, yes, I'm on the same.
Yeah.
Excellent. I
Yeah.
can I can give as good as I get.
And it
And
must
somebody
spur you on to produce more.
entirely.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I'm terribly
Um,
sorry.
no,
That's
you won't.
terrible. Didn't put it on silent. Oh dear.
No, don't worry. Better
Oh,
make your minds up. You took one for the team.
and what
Yeah.
do you find more enjoyable, comedy or presenting? Have you
Um,
sort of
do you know what?
preference?
They both have their rewards. I think comedy is much more. Well, comedy is much more rewarding, actually, as an endeavor because you're creating something. It's a very, very creative thing.
Yeah.
Presenting is a much more throwaway thing, but there's much more of it. So presenting is rewarding in a slightly more material way, in the sense that you get tons more of it.
Yeah.
Comedy, you don't. It's very unpredictable. You don't know. There was I talking about going and getting a recommission and how awful it was that you have to turn it around. A recommission is the best thing in the world,
Yeah.
you know. And the moment always comes when you've got a series that you go in and you speak to your commissioner at the end of one series, And as we went to speak to our controller at Channel 4, and he said, yeah, yeah, I mean, I could keep commissioning this, but nah,
Mm.
it's great, but nah,
Yeah.
maybe we should do something else. Should we do something else? Let's do something else. Why don't you go off and think of something else?
Yeah.
And we left thinking, well, that was good, wasn't it? And then after a few days, you think, actually, that was his very polite way of telling us he's not actually going to
That's what
recommit.
he said.
And we did try and think of other things, and they just, yeah, I don't know. We didn't really come up with anything that was quite as persuasive from a
No.
commissioning point of view as Armstrong and Miller. So yeah, what was the question?
Well, no, no, no.
Oh,
We're talking
presenting.
about yes, comedy
Yes.
or presenting.
Yeah. And then you know what? Then suddenly, because suddenly, I mean, your world does suddenly dry up because
Mm.
the ecosystem of your comedy work that's kind of what kept all the wheels turning. And you
Yes.
think,
Yeah.
actually, yes, it's all very well him talking about us doing new things. That's our earning potential suddenly gone.
Mm.
So yeah, presenting is a gig. I mean, that's a proper
Yeah.
job,
Yes.
and that comes in on a much more predictable
Yeah.
and comforting basis. My
Yeah.
time as a comedian was really, if I characterize it as anything, it was a time of sleepless nights because you're always thinking, God,
Trying to think. Yeah.
what if it doesn't come through? How do you keep the show on the road if you don't have any guarantees? And then
Yeah.
beyond this series, will there be another series? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the
So
same goes
more
for presenting as
stability.
well.
It's much more stable, obviously.
Much more stable.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a much more stable life. And actually, do you know, doing Pointless, for example, it's we've made that a much more comedic
Yes.
thing. You know,
We're
you're
able
not
to
you're
use your flair.
yeah, a little bit, yeah, and we have a lot of fun with it, and I think that's that's the beauty of the presenting side of it. I
Yeah.
have occasionally the other annoying thing is once you've done comedy, and certainly once you're on the radio as a voice, which I now am at Classic FM, um, you're a long way away from being the sort of pliable comedy character. You know,
Yes.
people know who you are too much, and it's
Yeah.
very hard then to play a comedy character. You know, you only have to think of Angus Deaton, for example, who had all kinds of roles um, within within comedy. He was always Rowan Atkinson's. He was the sort of straight man and all those early Rowan
Yes.
Atkinson
Yeah.
sketches, and he was in One Foot in the Grave and things like that. But actually, once he'd really taken off as Have I Got News for You's host, it kind of was the end of his comedy career, really, because everybody knew who he was as
Yes.
Angus Deaton.
Yeah.
You know.
And do you have any particularly funny memories of that stand out for you in Have I Got News for You that you'd like to share?
Um, wow. I mean, a great many is the answer to that. I mean, off the top of my head, and nothing sort of goes leaping to the
No.
forefront. I mean, they are outrageous records. I mean, they are such good fun. When we used to record Armstrong and Miller, because we would film a lot of stuff on location
Yeah.
that would then be edited. And then we'd film quite a few things in front of a studio audience. You'd build a set that would look for all the world like it was on location, but
Yeah.
actually it's a set in a studio.
Yeah.
And we used to invite people along to those on Friday nights. They were great fun. It was a nice excuse to see people, but they were quite tedious records, if I'm honest, because there's a lot of hanging about and waiting.
I bet.
And if we have to change our wigs and that's the great thing about doing sketches, endless wigs, endless
Yes.
bits of moustache and
Yes.
things glued to your face. We'd have to run off and go into makeup for 15 minutes. And some warm up would come out and sort of do a chat to the audience and keep them amused.
Keep them
And we'd
happy.
play in some of the sketches we'd recorded and things, but they were quite. I always felt it was a big ask, frankly, for anyone to come into those records because
Yes.
you weren't delivering them great things. By contrast, Have I Got News for You? That's an amazing show to come to, because from the minute it starts, and we'll record sometimes for 2 hours, there's a great deal of funny stuff. Most of it unbroadcastable. That's which
I
is
bet.
the joy of it. You know, we have to make sure that all kinds of things that have been said in the show, certainly that come into the edit, are absolutely above the law. But there are some.
But there's an awful
I
lot
remember once.
before it's edited.
I remember once. One time I've done it. In fact, many times I think I've done it. You at the end of each record, each person has to be filmed saying, apparently, looking the other way, apparently, just so that they can add that on to anything that you've said that might, so there is some sort of.
Yes, you've sort of covered your
There's a
back.
disclaimer, exactly. You can
Yeah.
say no, apparently. So there we are. Yes, I mean it's great fun. They're lovely. Those Paul and Ian are. I mean, it's an enormous privilege, to be able to have spent time, now over a period of nearly 20 years now. I've been a
Long
regular
time.
guest host on that, which is it's a big one,
Amazing.
and
Fantastic.
they're extraordinary. I mean, the pair of them, absolutely indefatigable, brilliant.
No, I bet. And so with Pointless, what do you most enjoy about? Is there sort of particular part of that show that you really, find most enjoyable?
I mean, there are plenty of parts to it. I think the most interesting, and the thing that keeps it fresh, because Lord knows something about it keeps me chirpy. I love doing it, and there's something about its particular chemistry that is just it's very hard to walk away from. I love the questions. We have brilliant question setters. So, there's quite a lot of comedy quite often, even in the questions,
Yes. Yeah.
you know. But I think what makes it really, I mean, Richard is another thing that makes it great fun. He's a very old friend. I've known Richard forever and ever.
Yes, I was
But the
actually
fact,
going to ask you
yeah.
when you actually first met, how you met Richard. That was another thing I was going to ask. Sorry.
Well, I'll come to that in a second. But just to finish the last point, actually, the
Mm,
fact that we have new contestants or new combinations of contestants each show keeps the chemistry. It's always fizzy, and the fact that we have pairs. I mean, that's a lovely. You're thrown into this lovely question of who on earth, who are all these people?
yeah.
What's the connection? Sometimes, we're left guessing.
Mm,
Do you think they're an item, those two?
yes.
No. We say, wow. Or do you think, or are they really just neighbours? We wonder.
Yes. Yes. I wonder.
There are some great combinations. You get sort of grannies, but who've come with a sort of child neighbour from next door because they watched the show together. That's really
Sweet.
sweet.
So
You
sweet.
get these really, I mean, they're just really, really lovely, but quite compelling stories behind them. So that's always interesting. Sorry, yes, on to Richard. No, Richard and I were both we actually met. We actually met. We were both at Cambridge together. He was the same
Okay.
college, same year. So we started together there. We didn't particularly know each other actually at
No.
university. We were quite. I mean, I very much knew of, and I really admired Richard. He was a very outspoken and wickedly funny guy. He was sort of brilliant. He was very much he was one of the big figures of his year, of my year as well, of that year.
Sorry.
No worry.
Honestly. Oh, for goodness sake. I'm so sorry.
Don't worry.
Oh dear. Right. All gone.
Gone. Gone.
I've been very good with my phones. So, can you tell me a bit about your music career? Is it something you'd
Yes.
like
I mean,
to have done more of, or would like
I've
to do more of in the future?
I mean, yeah, I always keep singing. I mean, I find it's a lovely thing to do. And getting a chance to record is it's an amazing privilege. You get some amazing, you can get some absolutely astonishing people coming to work on records, and the people behind the scenes arranging these things, the ensemble players, the engineers. I mean, just quite extraordinary level of work that goes into recording an album
Yeah,
is
I can imagine.
is and there's not a part of that process that isn't good fun.
Mm,
um I find the bit that's really difficult, the recording of it is just nothing but a laugh.
yeah,
It's so creative, and you're making stuff that you're always thrilled by. You're g'd up by the whole process.
yeah.
um and then you get to the point where you have to go out and promote it, and that's a bit I find really that's the really tough bit,
But
because you've
yeah,
got to go out
I
and
can
sort of
imagine.
bang the drum about your own performance,
Yes.
which it's just a very unseemly way to behave, really.
Yeah, difficult.
It's yeah, it is a bit. I love the recording. I find the promotion of it is a sort of almost
Mm,
endless rigmarole.
yeah.
Um, But you get to do lovely things. You get to sing. I mean, I did get to sing at the Albert Hall, which is
Oh
an
wow,
extraordinary
that's
privilege. Yeah.
amazing.
So that's it's a kind of wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Um, I
And do
don't
you,
know if I'll be doing any more. I mean, I wouldn't mind doing some more. It's yeah. I mean, I was very keen to try and do an actual classical record. Um, and I
okay.
still would love to do that.
Yeah.
My record label, I think they were very sensible, and they said, "Look, I wouldn't, no, don't do a classical record. You want to do a sort of classical crossover record, which is
Mm,
that sort of that, which is where they're quite right. Commercially speaking, that's exactly what you should be doing.
yes.
But I would love to find. The trouble is, I don't know if anyone would ever fund a record of me doing actual
I'm sure they would.
Absolutely,
I'm
yes.
sure they would.
It would probably be cheaper for me just to go around to the houses of both the people who'd buy it and give them a
Yes,
private concert. I think that's
yes,
that's probably a bit of a
exactly,
mark.
exactly. Um, and so moving on to catchphrase. I love catchphrase. Um, what was it like to be
Yes.
a contestant on the quiz rather than a presenter?
Yeah. I well initially I was actually really scared because
Right.
I great thing about being a presenter is it doesn't matter how many times you get it wrong. You
No,
know, you're allowed to stay. And on catchphrase, suddenly think, wow, no, this
this is it.
I've actually I've really got to get this right.
Yeah.
But it was really, really good fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Stephen, who hosts it,
Mm.
is such good fun. He makes it a really fun record. I hope we make it that much fun on Pointless. I hope we do.
I think
Um,
you do. I love Pointless. It's
oh, good,
great.
good.
Very,
But it
very.
was fun. It's a lovely thing to do. And actually, if you're involved with charity, it's a very good way of being able to add funds to their coffers.
Fantastic, isn't it? Fantastic way
Yeah.
of adding funds. Um, and so, what have you got? Have you got anything in the pipeline at the moment that?
Well, we have. I mean, this hasn't been confirmed yet, but I can tell you about it because it is definitely going to happen. I've been working for some time on a kind of reboot for classical music
Yeah.
for people who don't know anything about classical music, because weirdly, I got to love classical music when I was very little because I used to wake up very early. I was a very early riser, and I used to get very bored waiting for everyone else to wake up.
Yes.
And so I would just go downstairs and play, and I would play with all the things I wasn't allowed to touch
Yeah.
normally,
While everyone was
during
asleep.
the day. Exactly. And chief of those things was the mum and my parents' record player, and so I'd go and listen to all their records, which were all classical
Brilliant.
music records, and I just worked my way through them, and I got to know them really well. And so for me, it was wonderfully adult. It was very grown up and slightly forbidden as well. So it was rebellious,
Yes.
and I loved it. And I felt it was deeply empowering. And so therefore, classical music for me has. I've never been put off classical music by all the things that other people I think find a bit off-putting about classical
Mm.
music. And so I always like to proselytize about it, and I hope that I can maybe persuade people why it's so exciting,
Yes.
because a lot of people find it a bit off-putting, or not. A lot of people quite long to know more about it, but they haven't really been they haven't been introduced to it in the
No.
same way. And so I'm kickstarting a series of classical music exhibitions that we're going to be putting on in London. We're going to start with Bach, where we'll just do an hour
Brilliant.
of immersive Bach, and it's going to be amazing with live musicians on stage. We've got this lovely man, Cal McChrystal, the man who directs all those Giffords circus shows every year.
Yes.
So
Okay.
just such beautiful, beautiful things. So he's helping us bring this to life, and it's going to be with projections and phenomenal sound, light, and we'll just give people a few, very all done very light-heartedly. It's all going to be very gentle, light touch
Yeah.
stuff, but just give people enough to know why it's so fun, why they should
Good
enjoy it,
introduction.
and just basically surprise people by saying,
Yes.
"Look, I bet you didn't know," and we basically giving people Bach. That's what we want to do. And then next year we'll do Mozart, and we'll give people Mozart. And we'll just give them a really good. Then afterwards you get a playlist. And every week we'll send you a new thing to add to your
Yes.
Bach playlist. So you can gradually find your way around it and think, actually, do you know
Yes.
what? I love this. I
Oh,
genuinely
what
love
a
it. And it's
brilliant
not.
idea. It's very exciting.
Yeah,
Very
yeah. So
exciting.
that will be coming in the autumn. That will be coming to London.
Okay, quite soon.
A
And
Bach exhibition.
so
Yeah.
are you working on this a lot at the moment? Is this taking up most of
Right
your time?
now, yeah.
Yeah,
This is taking up a
a lot
lot of
of
time.
time.
Yeah,
A lot of time.
yeah.
Um,
But
and
it's lovely.
oh, that's really, really exciting. And what do you just sort of talking about you? What do you like to do to relax? What's your sort of ideal day?
Do you know what? I mean, yeah, we've got four boys, so um, relaxing is, and I do find it lovely being at home and relaxing.
Yeah.
So actually, being at home is what I love doing. It's not very relaxing, I
No,
wouldn't say.
I'm sure it's not
It
very
is
relaxing,
lovely.
but
It is
enjoyable.
genuinely you know, being at home. Yeah, we've got dogs, so going
Yes.
out walking, long walks,
Yeah.
um, eating good food,
Yeah.
having a laugh with the boys and my wife. I mean, yeah, it
Absolutely.
is. It's kind of that, really.
How
Yeah. What do
how
I
old
do
were the
particularly to
boys?
relax? They are 14, 12, 11, and 7.
Okay. Gosh, yes. Yeah.
Quite a
Oh, yeah.
spread.
Quite
Yeah.
hectic.
Quite a spread. But you know what? I mean, I would love to say fishing, but I never get fish.
No.
I haven't been fishing for years. I've got friends I used to go up to the Tweed with once a
Yeah.
year, and I was trying to think. We were saying, wouldn't it be nice to do it again? I said yes, and then suddenly remembered. Of course, I have a job now, and I now have a radio show every morning,
Yeah. So you're flat
from
out.
9 till noon. So I'm kind of, yeah, which kind of takes up a lot of time.
It
So
can be
yeah.
saved for later. Plenty of time to do it
Can
in
be
the
saved for
future.
later, and I love it. I really do love what I get to do. Everything I get to do is part of things. They're all things that I love.
Yeah.
So it's
Well, that's
it's a pretty
brilliant.
blessed life.
And just one final thing. Who would be your dream table drawer
Do you know? Yes,
party?
this is a really good question. Who, who would have been a great draw? I mean, people to have around a table. I mean, I always think, the people you might say, yeah, Keith Richards
Mm,
or or I don't know, Tom Waits or something. I don't know. I tell you, I'd really love to sit next to actually
mm.
as an adult. I never knew. I didn't know either of my grandfathers particularly well. One grandfather died before I was born, my Armstrong grandfather,
Yes.
and my other grandfather died when I was, I don't know, 13. But he'd sort of been in an old people's home from the age of when I was 11
Yes.
on. So
You
I never
probably
really.
never.
I'd love to meet them as an adult. So I'd really adore that. Can
Yeah.
I have them, my two
Yes.
grandfathers?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I think that's a really good point because when we're younger, we don't really. There are so many questions we want to ask now.
No.
Now
I
we're
know, and
older.
they'd have been, and we were quite annoying when we were little, I think, and there were sort of
Yeah.
connections that you longed to have with your grandparents, and you
Yes.
never quite did.
No.
Occasionally, little moments, but
No. I think it's
you
a very
ended
good
up by
choice.
and large,
Very
yeah.
good choice. Um, Thank you so much, Xander.
Such a pleasure.
Absolutely
Thank you, Wanda.
fascinating. Um,
Brilliant.
and I'm going to stop the recording now. Thank you.